Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of the GEICO 15-Minute Moto Show. I'm your host, Ralph Sheheen. So let me ask you a question. How good a shape are you in? Yeah, that's what I thought. We could all do better, right? You do the best you can, but are you good enough to win a Supercross championship? Would you like to? Well, have I got the guy for you. Aldon Baker, how are you? You are the man that everybody thinks of when it comes to getting ready to go racing and win a Supercross or motocross championship.
Well, thanks, Ralph. Great to obviously see you, and thanks for having me on board. And yeah, man, I appreciate the kind words. Obviously, it's a challenge, every year, and with ultimately every athlete as we progress season after season.
How much has that business changed over time? I know the racing, Supercross, motocross has gone through shifts and evolutions as to how guys approach the sport. There was a time when nobody trained. There was a time everybody just partied on Friday night and raced on Saturday. Then this guy named Carmichael comes along and starts kind of thinking about it a little bit more. And then you guys get together and it went stratospheric on the training part. How much since then, if that was, say, 15 years ago, maybe even 20, I guess how far back it goes?
21 years, yeah.
Yeah.
21 years.
That's crazy to think it's gone that fast. How much in 20 years has the training evolved?
Ralph, I mean, it's evolved a lot. I mean, it's like anything, just when you look at the motorcycles today and you see how things have changed in the last 20 years, so is the training. Now, look, there is always the basics. In order to be fit, you've got to have good cardio conditioning. You've got to have good strength training. And you've got to spend a lot of time on that motorcycle, honing and getting your skills right and building up your riding endurance and your riding speed. How we do that now over the years definitely has evolved. We have generations change. What makes a rider, I'd say not that they're not motivated, but to get the best out of them, you've got to find different ways and different elements of how you put that into the training to get the best out of it, and also to create some sort of longevity, because as you know, it's such a long season with two basically different seasons in it. So when I compare back to when I started with Ricky, those were the days too when you did everything kind of undercover. No one got in there, and you hid from everybody, and you worked hard, but it was very individual. And now today, we've changed it to where we put good guys together, and there's a lot more support from the teams and putting team guys together and trying to get the best out of that system, which I feel is a big progression, but it is not that easy because you've got different, personalities and different guys that are driven in different ways, but all want to win. So for sure, to answer the question, it's changed a lot for sure.
How much of that change has come because of just generations? In other words, when Ricky was a teenager and starting this process with you, things were very different 20 years ago in the world we live in than the kids, the young athletes that you're seeing today. So how much have you had to change just because of where they're at mentally as opposed to where Ricky might have been?
Oh, it's changed a lot because the dynamics of the way the kids are brought up today are different. And what gives them that hunger is a lot different. And I think the biggest thing too is social media. That's now how you grow up, where when I look back to 20 years ago, that wasn't the case. And I think there's good things with social media and there's bad things. It is a big distraction, but then it also has a lot of positives. So for me, using that, because I know it's such a big part of how you go about things, is trying to find the motivation with that being just part of the normal kind of life, and it's almost like the world's a lot closer now because you get to see so much or get in link with what everyone else is doing and coordinating and all that. So it's a busy time that's added to what you still got to do with the basics. So it's a challenge, but it's different.
You know, we love collecting stuff around here at the Speed Sport offices. So I'm just looking over to my right over here, and we got die-cast bikes. We got Villapoto, Carmichael, James Stewart, and the late, great Nicky Hayden over here. All guys that you've worked with, just a few of them. You can add to the list. It's pretty legendary. You start throwing Ryan Dungey in there and a bunch of others. I don't want to ask you who's the best because I know that's almost impossible, but maybe who was your favorite to train with and why?
Yeah, Ralph, that is a once again a tough one, because you all, when you're training someone and you're in it, you have good and bad times. There's the tough part of training and seeing an athlete develop, and then seeing him go on to reach his goals and win championships and multiple. So I'd say there were phases that it would be tough. I mean, I still go back to Ricky because I spent 7 years with him, and he was the one that I started with that I got the opportunity to see if I could do something, with him. And I always look at it as a team. So I still look at that as probably the best. And to me, it was the most least distracted, if you can say, because, he had his own facility, and my job was just to focus on him and the training and getting him fit and strong and keeping him healthy and developing as it goes. Where a lot of the other athletes, which I had a lot of good times with all of them. I mean, everyone had some impressive results, which you always will never forget. I mean, I don't know if gone are the days when riders can do 24-0, which was, Ricky did it twice and James did it once. That's incredible. And then my next goal was sort of like, man, if I could, when I was training guys together, could they be first, second, and third? Which that was a challenge, and in the premier class, and that did happen one time, I think, which was huge. And then just seeing, riders get more championships, completing their goals. So there's so many cool things, but if I had to pinpoint one, probably just be Ricky, because of, like what I said, the amount of time, and that was the roots of it.
People have always said that Supercross motocross racers are the best conditioned athletes in the world. Obviously, there's folks in the world of soccer that might argue that. There's guys in boxing and MMA that might debate that.
Yeah.
But as you look at the landscape, how do you think Supercross motocross racers stack up today to the world's other great athletes?
I mean, I'd say they're right up there at the top. I mean, I get it. And I've tried to compare a lot of different scenarios. But, if you just start with the risk factor in the sport, right out of the gate, that dissolves a lot of other sports, And then when I look at cardio conditioning, I've got enough proof of where their heart rate is and what it's got to be maintained at. So that brings them right in there with the top endurance sports. And then on the actual power to weight ratio on conditioning and strength to manhandle that motorcycle for that period of time when it's honestly trying to work against you, that opens up that other dynamic where I don't think there's sports to compare to, So I believe it puts it right at the top for those reasons. And yes, I think people will argue and this and that. I mean, any endurance sport that requires cardio and some sort of strength is tough on any good day, I mean, we can't compare this sport to golf, but there again, golf has its own way. If it's a mental game, and it's a repetitive stroke genius game. If you mess up, so it has its own dynamics, and that's where I feel like it really gets tough to do the comparisons. But I do think that as a respect factor, this one should be respected at the highest of levels.
Moto athletes, Supercross, motocross guys, are not necessarily the biggest guys in the world, right? Most of the guys that are champions have not been physically massive in stature. Ricky, James, Villapoto, even Dungey. Dungey was tall, but he wasn't big, right?
Yeah.
Chad Reed, same thing. Cooper Webb, all these guys. Kenny Roxon. Can give us, for those that will never push ourselves to those limits, when you think of a 450 motocross, supercross bike and how much it's trying to get away from you, and those guys have to control that through the most insane obstacles at incredible speeds, give us an idea of what those athletes are like. You mentioned heart rate, conditioning. What levels do their bodies have to be able to withstand to stand at that top step of the podium?
Well, if you start just with the cardio, I mean, they're well over 180 when they're racing, and most of the time training. And a part of that does come from the adrenaline factor, but still, it is still at that heart rate. So breathing and control of breath directly aligns with how we have to train to get them conditioned to be able to cope with that. And then on the physical side, like you say, you can't be a big guy because you've got to be agile on a motorcycle. Your goal is to become one with that motorcycle so that you're using it as a source of speed and changing directions. So body shape, you've got to be as lean as possible, I feel, but yet is pretty dang strong, because when things aren't going quite right, you have to basically, between your upper body and your legs, manhandle and control what this bike is honestly doing. And then adding to that, throttle control, clutch, gearing, all of that is coming, brakes, and this is all happening at speed. So the brain is I think, being flooded with a lot of sort of effects in a way that do separate it from a lot of other sports, so yeah, I don't know, like I said, you can't even compare it, but there's a lot going on where, and they make it kind of look easy, I mean, even to jumps, if you don't get the right acceleration out, the right hit of the jump, you're not going to make it. Or if you're too high, you're wasting time in the air, you're not going forward. There's so many pieces to get a good lap in and to be consistent, and that's why, we have to be so repetitive with the training that it becomes as natural as possible, that the body can adapt and do a job that is very, very unique.
Okay, so listen, the average guy who rides his motorcycle, whether it's a dirt bike on an open Saturday afternoon, or maybe he just goes for a nice twisty ride through the mountains on his Harley, we all want to be maximizing our time in the saddle, right? And that means we need to be in good physical and mental shape when we get on the bike and go ride. Everybody needs to be 100% focused. So, hey, look, the average guy, Aldon, unlike you, every now and then we might have a soda or a donut, or, sneak a bag of fries, which I know is absolutely against your rules. But give me one or two tips for our viewers that, hey, this guy goes riding at his local motocross track on a Saturday, or goes for a ride through the twisties, that they should think about.
Well, I think it comes to your priorities. You've got to give up something to gain something. So if you're happy, and if it's just on a Harley and you totally enjoy, and you're stopping off and having a soda, and it's not affecting you, and you're happy with that, then it's no problem. If you're an enduro rider on the weekend, and when you start riding, your arms are blowing up and the heart rate's gone through the roof and you can hardly breathe, you have to give up something. So I always say, if you can get a balance, if you can dedicate each day something to do with your eating habits and your cardio, and that's just, to me, for your basic health, if you can start, and it starts with planning, but if you can say, hey, what 2 things can I do on each one of those that could make me better? Could I walk 30 minutes today? Could I maybe jog 20? Something needs to be put in that department of what I call cardio training, and then eating. What are people going to give up? It's one thing if you have a soda and donut, but maybe then don't have dessert. I think it's starting a form of discipline of, like, how bad do I want to be better in pretty much all areas, not only with my motorcycling, and what can I give up as of today? And I think if you do that daily, you'll start a process of, having a better, I'd say, disciplined sort of daily lifestyle in a way, instead of these extremes. I love these things where people, well, I'm going to do this challenge. Well, a challenge just tells me that's temporary, So I think we've got to get into something that can be maintained as a lifestyle.
See, Aldon, you're always pushing me. Now I got to give up 2 things. Why can't I just give up 1?
I mean, just 2, man.
Aldon, it is great seeing you. All the best to you and your riders in the upcoming season. I know we're going to be watching and cheering for you guys. All the best out there, my friend.
Thanks, Ralph, and you guys go well, and we look forward to chatting again. All
okay.
Right.
Hey, take 2 things, everybody. Pick 2, and you'll be a better rider, whether it's at your local motocross track or up in the hills when you're out riding on your cruiser. I'm Ralph Sheheen. Thanks for tuning in for another episode of the GEICO 15-Minute Moto Show, this time with the legendary Aldon Baker. You learned something today, and don't forget, you can join us every week right here on Speed Sport for a new episode of the show. We'll see you soon.